I'm conscious when I talk to rooms at cyber events that there's a whole mixture of people, new to the industry, veterans of the industry, in all facets of cyber, or maybe not even cyber. So some of the things I like to talk about are just stories that I see, things that I've dealt with in my career, try and relate it to as many people as I can in the room. And this was just a new talk that I've come up with for certainly not the greatest war stories ever told, but in cyber, hopefully give you an idea of some of the things that I've seen on, I guess, on the front lines of InfoSec in the roles that I've been in. So disclaimers, I like memes. I don't take myself too seriously, for those who know me personally. And some of these stories may or may not have happened. I have to say that legally. They did. So get those out of the way. Yeah, this clicker's definitely not good. Is it just lagging, is it? I'll crack on. So who am I? I started my InfoSec career at the train line. Out of luck, really. I was a tech analyst there back in 2011, and I was asked to do PCI compliance. Sorry to the rest of you who work in PCI compliance, it's not the most exciting of things to start your InfoSec career in, but that was my in to the industry, even though I've been in IT for 20 or so years. Really upskilled during that role 7 or 8 years ago, so I'm not a veteran by any stretch of the imagination. There'll be lots of people in this room smarter than I am and better than I am. Go on, clicker. Right. I then went to Skyscanner. If people follow me on LinkedIn and things, that's probably where I'm best known, I guess, was the 3 years I spent there building their security team from sort of humble beginnings, very agile tech business, and that was where I probably learned most of the things that I kind of know today. And it's also where a lot of these incidents may or may not have happened. Just get that out of the way. Spent 10 months, a bit shorter than I would have liked, in the cyber leadership at Capital One in the UK, an awesome financial services tech business. And now I'm head of security engineering and head of AWS Cloud and whatever else I want to be called on a day-to-day basis at Photobox. So we own Moonpig, Hoffman, PostXXL, and now Dutch company Greets. So again, a very tech-led internet business, very fast-paced, very chaotic. And some of the things I'm going to talk about are, you might see these things every day. Some of you may not. I'm hoping they're exciting. There'll be a few funny ones, I think. I'm also a public speaker, hence why I'm doing these things. I run the security meetup up in Scotland, which I think is the second biggest tech meetup in Scotland, not to try and big it up too much. I run an AWS Security Slack forum, so if anybody here is heavily into AWS and wants to contribute to that, please do come and see me. And I'm a regular LinkedIn brain farter. That was somebody else's words, not mine. So when I was putting this together around incidents and things that we see at the forefront of InfoSec, this probably rung true. When I went through the 9 or so incidents that I've got, and even the funny ones, most of those have come about through somebody telling me that something has happened. So we don't know what we don't know. And until somebody tells us that something is suspicious or something might be happening, we can have all the great tech in the world, but that tends to be the mechanism that I find out about incidents happening at businesses. So it's a recurring theme of some of the things that I'm going to go through. So if you don't work in security and you find things in your business that are happening, please tell your security teams, because you might be the first one to be doing so. So let's crack through them. Incident number 1. For legal reasons, I can't tell you who the company third party was that we were using. Well done to those of you who know that that's Judge Judy, by the way. So I can't tell you who they are, but let's call them Boogle. That's who they were. Let's call it Boogle Bad Words, just to avoid getting into any kind of legal complications. I'll never get Brian Badondi into a presentation again, by the way, so I think that's well done on my part. So what happened here is we had a Boogle Bad Words account, and it was clocking up over £30,000 of account spend. It was an employee that told me about this happening, said it was very suspicious because we weren't running a campaign at the moment. For those of you who've seen Boogle, it's the sponsored adverts at the top. And what was happening was they were hosting an advert that was going off to a malicious Bitcoin site. So it didn't have our company name attached to it. Nobody would have known it was us, but that's what was happening. So immediately changed the passwords on those accounts, thinking that should do it, and then we'll get in contact with Boogle and speak to their legal team. Now, the attack kept happening, despite the fact we changed the passwords. We were really concerned that our email had been compromised because password resets were getting intercepted. Turned out that wasn't happening, which was good, but Google's legal team wouldn't tell us what was happening, and we never got to the bottom of that. But what we did do was we implemented 2FA, two-factor authentication, on every Google account that we had, and it stopped the attack. So our learning from this incident is 2FA works. It's not a pain in the ass. It really, really helps for your third-party logins and other technologies that you might have credentials for. So I'd encourage anybody to think about their 2FA policies within their businesses, shadow IT, the things that they may or may not know about, because that fixed that incident for us. Incident number 2. At a previous internet company, always tend to happen over the weekends, these things. So I came in on a Monday morning, found out that we'd had an outage on the Friday evening, just on a small part of our site. It turned out that some data had been deleted automatically by a bot crawling for open AWS buckets, clusters on the internet. So what it had done is it had deleted the data that was on there, put a little ransomware note, and it brought down a part of our service. Now, we had the data backed up, because the guys were very good at making sure that happened. So back up your data is a really, really important point from that one. We also deleted the ransom note, which was a bit unfortunate, so we couldn't see what was in it. And we started to tighten up AWS massively. It's something I'm doing in my current role. If you're in AWS as a business, it's really, really new to businesses, even though the product has been around for a long, long time. And it is so easy just to create things that are open to the internet. I mean, open S3 buckets must be the easiest hack or data loss in the whole industry, because all you have to do is find the bucket. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to steal any credentials or find some sneaky way in. They're just there. They're open. This sort of struck me, and this is actually from last year rather than currently. AWS is really bloody hard. It's a really difficult thing to get your head around. I mean, these are just some of the services. I think there's over 100 services now as part of AWS. Now, I think for security, there's about 8 or 9. For all the other parts of AWS, there's over 100, and we're expected to know a little bit about all of these things. And I find that really difficult to get my head around. As security people, we're expected to be experts in all of these areas, and the reality is we're not experts in any of them. So, I find AWS extremely interesting. I'm really passionate about it, but I'm by no means a security expert at all on AWS. Incident number 3. Phishing. Phishing still one of the major routes in for hackers into a business. We're no different in the companies I've been. So this one, again, an employee let me know that something suspicious had happened. They'd been sent an email with an attachment that they didn't recognize. We used our existing email tool at the time to see that over 10 people had been sent that email with that attachment. Thanks to the joys of things like Slack, we contacted those people within minutes and found out who had and who hadn't opened the attachment. And sadly, a few had double-clicked it. And sadly, at the time, the colleague that I was working with went into blind panic, wanted to stop all endpoints across our business using the internet or downloading anything on the internet. Bit of an overreaction, which tends to happen in incident response. You sometimes go to the worst-case scenario. But what we did was we sandboxed that attachment. We had a look at the code. We could see it was trying to speak out to the internet to go to a site that was blocked by our firewalls. So a bit of a panic over, which is always taking stock of incidents, even if it takes you 10, 20 minutes, is always a good thing. So what it did is it really just drove a whole load of good work on improving our email protection. I'm happy to name the company. We used Mimecast at the time at that company, and they had some very cool features around checking attachments before they even get to the recipient, sandboxing URLs, so it doesn't actually matter if you click on them or not. Lots of good training, phishing awareness, and tests and things. So sadly, and not just in security, but in business in general, we tend to respond to incidents, and that's when we make changes to our business. We can't always be completely proactive all the time. So I hope these incidents have a recurring theme of that ilk, that's kind of what happens. Incident number 4. This was one of the worst that I've dealt with at a previous company, and it was found via an external bug bounty scheme, which we were running at the time. The nature of bug bounty schemes is you actually want them to find the really nasty stuff, but it does set hearts racing a little bit. This was a third-party product that had been built by a contractor in the Ukraine. Yeah, don't ask. Under no NDA, under very little contractual obligation, created just a terrible product with 2 open MySQL databases. Thankfully, no personal information on them, but enough that it would be a pain in the backside. So we paid a lot of money in bug bounty for that, and it caused big changes within the business around how to engage with third parties, contractual side of things, that side of it. Yeah, that was pretty nasty. Incident number 5. This was a really interesting part of my career because I'd never dealt with bots until a certain company that I was at before, and I probably haven't since. We used to get millions of hits a day on our site from bots, scraping the site for the data that was on it. And we had bot protection in place, a market-leading product to stop non-human behavior on our website, and it was very clever, and it had lots of kind of limits you could set as to how you maneuver yourself through a website. And these were just all getting under the radar. Thousands of hits over multiple IP addresses, just getting under those limits. Now, we never got to the bottom of what was happening here, but the only conclusion we drew from it was that these are human beings. It was coming from China, they were Chinese IP addresses, where a company is paying hundreds of people just to run searches on your website. How do you protect yourself against that when it's actually human traffic, and you don't want to block human traffic because they may be legitimate customers? So that's been one of the most interesting ones I've dealt with, where we put all this tech in place, we think we're implementing market-leading solutions. They work 99% of the time, but then how do you stop this kind of thing, or this kind of thing, because I can see that, you can't. And also, there are instances where you just don't get to the bottom of them. And how far do you continue to work on those things, or do you draw a line under it and say, we move on? Again, that was one of those. Incident number 6, I'm quite proud of that meme. I did steal it, I don't make these things up. The public Wi-Fi password. This probably happens more than companies would like to admit. We had an office opening party in one of our European offices. Photographer, live band, whatever it was that day. And the photographer then put the pictures on his Facebook site to say, hey, this is the kind of work I do. Now, an eagle-eyed employee spotted that on a whiteboard behind somebody, there was a Wi-Fi password for that building. Now, we weren't very good at that point. We were using the same Wi-Fi password for all of our buildings. So there was blind panic for a number of days to try and not only get the photos removed, then clean up the passwords, then try and get people to use passwords better, then try and actually implement decent tech that means you don't have to have passwords for things like that. Some of these things can be small incidents that then develop into months and months of work and change the cultures of companies. So if you ever host events in your offices, be really wary of the information you leave around, because it's quite easy to do something nasty with them. Number 7, this was only a few months ago at Moonpig. Happy to tell you everything about this because it was out there in the public thing anyway. So the Trump balloon, don't know if anybody saw this. When Trump was in the UK on the Thursday, I think it was, our new head of social there put a tweet out saying, if we make 100 of these, would you buy them? It was about 5 o'clock at night. I was on Twitter, saw that it was doing some serious numbers, so I sent him a message and I said, well done, because he was quite new in the job. I said, you're generating a lot of good noise. And he said, yeah, have you seen the replies? So I went into the replies, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in any company I've been in. It had been absolutely hijacked by the alt-right. Hundreds of replies saying, we're abandoning your company, what an awful company. So this went from being a kind of giggle, well, this is all very good, to he was getting personally attacked on LinkedIn and his personal Facebook page. We had senior members of staff, there was people trying out their social media. We immediately checked our social media accounts, implemented 2FA on ones that didn't have 2FA, checking for suspicious IP logins. All sorts of crazy stuff happened in a couple of hours there. And I've been a Twitter user for 10 years or so, and it really taught me the power of what's happening on Twitter at the moment, especially with bots. The majority of replies to that tweet that were negative were not real human beings. They followed a pattern. So anytime you see noise, political noise generated on Twitter, be really wary of whether it's real, because I have a real suspicion now of a lot of the things that go on Twitter. The irony is, by the Monday, we had more registrations to our site than we'd had before, so the PR generated was actually awesome, and most of the replies were actually positive rather than that immediate negative thing. I think the thing that scares me about this is that when it's hijacked by certain political sides or organizations, things like Anonymous or whoever, is they will go after senior members of staff. So if there are senior people in the room, I'm sure there'll be plenty, and you have public LinkedIn pages or even personal Facebook accounts and things, be really careful that you're out there, and it's easy for these organizations to generally find who you are and try and sort of sniff about you. But that was fun in hindsight, this incident, because it was new and different. How am I doing for time? Well, I'll assume I'm okay until somebody tells me not to. Everybody knows about WannaCry. Surely, unless you've been in the industry 6 months, everybody dealt with this. Where was I when WannaCry first kicked off? I was in a pub. That was when we sort of first heard about it on about 4 o'clock on a Friday, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock on a Friday. And it kicked off over the weekend. I happened to be going on holiday on the Monday, so I was on a beach when it all went absolutely crazy. Most security incidents tend to happen when I'm on holiday. Just coincidence. This changed my whole opinion on patching. I put a blog out about 2 or 3 years ago about patching, about how I didn't think it was the holy grail, and I think companies pay too much attention to it because they think, oh, we've patched, now we're good, we've patched. It is only one of 100 different mechanisms you can have to secure your infrastructure, but that really got everybody thinking about patching. If you had Windows XP or whatever the operating system was, would have stopped that happening. So it changed my opinion on that. So the last real one, I can't really say too much about this for obvious reasons. This was basically a very disgruntled employee that left the company and still had access to things she shouldn't have had access to. Deleted things and caused a huge amount of pain. I think it took 84 days for us to find out that it had happened. It was costing us over £20,000 a week. We identified 49 separate either policy failures or things that we had missed, things that we should have been doing related to that, which is incredibly scary. And we thought we were fairly mature at the time. And it was a real eye-opener that it only takes one bad lever with the right accesses to really, really do damage to your business. And as a result, we reimagined our whole start as levers process, third-party access, all of those things that we just assume that people leave on good terms in companies, and hopefully most do. But that was a good example of one that unfortunately didn't. And especially in companies and internet agile businesses where you do give a lot of access to people and you trust people. There's a level of trust beyond what I've seen at larger organizations. 5 minutes, good. I'm timing this pretty well for somebody who was stressed out of his brains at 2:20. So some of them are lighthearted moments. InfoSec I find quite funny at times. There are things that happen in businesses that are actually quite funny. This is one. I'll try not to go into too much detail about this one. We had a forensic endpoint capability that alerted at certain times for certain behaviors, and we let our staff use their personal laptops at home. I was aware that either 6:34 or 6:35 every morning, this person was going on the same porn site. So he clearly got up at 6:30, and I'll leave the rest to vivid imaginations. That led to some awkward conversations. These are things that employees shouldn't be doing, obviously. You have your own personal equipment for however you want to use it. But how much do we want to be looking at employees? We don't spy on people in internet businesses. That's not what we do. Don't have enough hours in the day to do it. But it's dangerous, and we should be blocking it, and we should be making sure that doesn't happen. So 6:34 is going to stick in my head for the rest of my career. And the last one, to leave you with some toilet humor, if that wasn't toilet humor before. In Skyscanner one day, I had a minute in between 2 meetings, and I've never taken a laptop into a toilet before, and I won't do again off the back of this incident. It's not what we think, if that's where your brain's going. So I put it down on the ledge above the sinks, and I went for the world's quickest pee. Turned around, my laptop had gone. So I thought, the security guy's in the bathroom, somebody's taken my laptop for a bit of a joke. Walked outside, there was nobody there. Went on to Slack, to the whole office. I said, yeah, very funny guys. I have 1 minute until a very important meeting, and where's my laptop? Joke over, lesson learned, nothing. I found it 40 minutes later on a random desk with nobody at that desk. It turned out, this was transpired what had happened, is in all of 30, 40 seconds that I was at the toilet, somebody came out of the cubicle, washed their hands, picked up the laptop, took it away thinking it was theirs. Meanwhile, I've got my IT support team frantically checking CCTV to see who's gone into the toilet area without a laptop and then come back with one. And then I got a little tap on the shoulder going, Stu, you've got to come and see this. So it turns out it was our chief operating officer at the time, who had obviously come out of the cubicle, assumed it was his laptop for whatever reason, lapse of concentration, and hadn't realized that he'd caused 40 minutes of probably the most painful 40 minutes of my career. And how can I tell a COO that he's made such a mistake? Now, I did on the day that he left that company, and we've had a giggle about it since. So that's a lesson learned for me. Don't take laptops into toilets. Also, don't assume that people are doing things in a nasty way. That was a pure mistake on both his part and my part. But they are quite funny stories to tell. So thank you. We're recruiting, always got to say that. So I'm around for the rest of the day. Come and see me if anybody's looking for internet business roles. We are always hiring. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.